Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottama Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtike. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 22. Chapter 22 is entitled The Marriage of Kardama, Muni and Devahuti. Text number 12. Udyatasya hi kamasya Udyatasya hi kamasya prativado na shasyate prativado na shasyate api nirmukta sangasya api nirmukta sangasya kama raktasya kim punaha kama raktasya kim punaha Udyatasya hi kamasya prativado na shasya. Of one who is free, sangasya, from attachment, kim punaha, how much less? Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swamy Prabhupada. Translation: to deny an offering that has come in material life, everyone is desirous of sense gratification. Therefore, a person who gets an object of sense gratification without endeavor should not refuse to accept it. Kardama Muni was not meant for sense gratification, yet he aspired to marry and prayed to the Lord for a suitable wife. This was known to Swayambhu Manu. He indirectly convinced Kardama Muni. You desire a suitable wife like my daughter, and she is now present before you. Should not reject the fulfillment of your prayer. You should accept my daughter. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswate Devi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Rama 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 Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim Yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Yat kripatamaham vande Paramananda Madhavam Yat kripatamaham vande Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So this is a verse which Swayambhu Manu is speaking to Kardama Muni. Previous to this verse, it was explained that Swayambhu Manu had come to Kardama Muni's ashram to offer his daughter in marriage to Kardama Muni because Kardama Muni desired to accept a wife Generally, it is thought that the goal of life is sense gratification. But the scriptures teach us, the acharyas teach us, Krishna teaches us, when you have got the human form of life, You should understand that there is a higher purpose than merely expending this valuable opportunity of human life simply for sense pleasures. So this word used for sense pleasures is kama. When we try to understand what is spiritual life, then the first thing we should understand, characteristic of material life is kama, and the characteristic of spiritual life is prema. In Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is clearly explained, it is defined very precisely what is kama and what is prema. So kama is defined as a very strong desire to satisfy one's own senses. That's called kama. And prema is defined as a very strong desire to satisfy Krishna's senses. So, sense satisfaction is common between kama and prema. But because kama involves satisfaction of one's own senses, therefore it is considered material. Means the result of kama is further entanglement in material existence. And kama in that sense is very dangerous. It could be the cause of very complicated entanglement that it may not be possible afterwards to get out of such complex entanglement. Because the nature of kama is, it is described in the scriptures. It is like a blazing fire. And obviously, blazing fire has to be put out. Otherwise, it will consume you. It's very dangerous. So the attempt to extinguish this blazing fire in the heart by supplying fuel to this blazing fire is described as the attempt to satisfy one's senses by indulging in kama. So what happens when somebody feeds a blazing fire with more fuel? The fire will only increase. It is never going to get extinguished simply by supplying more fuel. Particularly this is true of a blazing fire. But if one tries to put out the blazing fire by denying supplying more fuel, then automatically the fire will subside in course of time when the existing fuel gets exhausted. So prema is the proper way to put out this blazing fire of kama. So this prema is described or defined as, instead of trying to satisfy one's own senses through kama, one should simply satisfy Krishna's senses and thereby not only extinguish this blazing fire of kama, but also automatically satisfy one's own senses when Krishna's senses are satisfied. So somebody may say, how does satisfying someone else's senses will satisfy my senses? How does it work? So the example is given that if you want to supply nourishment of water to a tree, it is not possible to individually supply water to every part of the tree, like the leaves, the branches, the twigs, the flowers, the fruits. Not possible. And even if somebody attempts like that, it is going to be ineffective. Whereas somebody who waters the root of the tree, then naturally all the parts of the tree get that nourishment without any separate endeavor. Similarly, if we try to satisfy our senses by supplying the sense objects, and this material world has been described as Vishaya Sagara, ocean of sense objects. So certainly in this material world, there is no scarcity of sense objects, availability of sense objects to satisfy one's own senses. Just like in an ocean, there is no scarcity of water. Similarly, this material world is so constituted that it is filled with sense objects. Because all the material objects that are there, every object is made up of a combination of one or more of the five basic elements: earth, water, fire, air, sky, Panchabhuta. And these characteristic of these Panchabhuta elements is, it is a quality of this element that it has got the characteristic of the sense object. Just like the sky has got the quality of sound, or the air has got the quality of touch sensation. Similarly, the eyes have got the quality of sensation of form, and the tongue has got the quality of the sensation of taste, and the earth has got the quality of sensation of smell. Like this, these 5 elements, their very characteristic or nature is that they naturally, inherently are characterized by these qualities of different sensations. So when we have got this material body made up of the 5 elements, and the characteristic of this material body is such that we lose our natural spiritual pleasure. That is the characteristic of each one of us as spirit soul. As soon as this spirit soul is covered by a material body, then the spirit soul is deprived of its natural spiritual pleasure. Then when we are not having that spiritual pleasure, so we seek some other pleasure. Whatever pleasure is available. So in the absence of spiritual pleasure in this material world, we seek what is called as material pleasure. And what is the nature of material pleasure? This body consisting of the senses coming in contact with the sense objects which have got one or more of the 5 qualities. That produces a sensation, and that sensation is foolishly interpreted to mean some happiness, material happiness. So this is nicely explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate adyantavanta kaunteya nateshu ramate buddhaha. Those who are intelligent, buddhaha, they never take pleasure in sense contact. Samsparshaja. Samsparsha means sense contact. Samsparshaja means such sense contact generating what is called as bhoga. Bhoga means material pleasure. So an intelligent person understands that all varieties of material pleasure which are naturally resulting from sense contact, are always flickering, momentary, also called as chapala sukha. That means one moment it is there, the next moment it disappears. It cannot last more than just a moment. That is the nature of sense contact. Samsparsha. And having forgotten Krishna, consequently having forgotten our own self, a spiritual being, naturally as a spiritual being, we are always joyful. We don't have to seek any pleasure because we are always happy. Prasannatma. But this characteristic of always being happy is lost as soon as we get covered by this material body. And why this covering of material body? Because foolishly we desire some material enjoyment. That is our foolishness. And in the process of seeking this material enjoyment, we lose spiritual pleasure and we try for the substitute material pleasure, bhoga. And the nature of this material pleasure or material enjoyment, bhoga, is such that it will put us more and more into forgetfulness of who we are, who is Krishna, what is our natural relationship with Krishna, what is our natural position of always being joyful. And even that spiritual joyful position, the spiritual happiness is multiplied millions and billions of times when we are in relationship with Krishna. All that is lost when we desire material enjoyment. Bhoga vancha kare. In a verse in the scriptures, it is said, when we desire this material pleasure, material enjoyment, then immediately we are put into forgetfulness of our own self, forgetfulness of Krishna, and we get covered by a material body. And material body means we are missing our natural spiritual pleasure, and we begin searching for a substitute, material pleasure, because that's the only thing available in this material world, with this material body. And by the effect of the material energy, we are put into what is called as illusion. And that illusion dictates that you can go on trying to squeeze out some pleasure out of sense contact, while the reality is, in sense contact, there is no real pleasure. There is no pleasure in sense contact. But under illusion, we have hope that once I try, with the hope that I will get some pleasure I am seeking, and because I am spirit, I can only be happy or satisfied by spiritual pleasure. Matter can never give me spiritual pleasure. But under illusion, I have got hope that I will try to squeeze out some pleasure out of sense contact. I fail. If I try once, I'll think, oh, I didn't try properly. I made some mistake. Or I was unsuccessful in this attempt, let me attempt again to become successful. And this goes on and on and on and on and on. It can go on endlessly. But when one becomes wise in the association of Krishna, or Krishna's pure devotee, then immediately there is a realization that what I am really seeking, I will never get it by this sense contact. As soon as that realization comes, then we begin to search for happiness beyond this sense contact. And until we come to the point of bhakti yoga, we will keep searching and searching and searching beyond sense contact. Becoming satisfied by the illusory happiness, momentary illusory happiness available through sense contact, is the standard of pleasure enjoyed by animals and lower creatures than the animals. Gokharaha. It is a description in the scriptures. Sense pleasure is available everywhere in this creation to all varieties of created beings. But a human being with developed consciousness should not have the standard of enjoying or becoming satisfied by this illusory, momentary sense pleasure like the animals or the lower creatures. So our modern civilization, the standard of this civilization is go on trying to squeeze more and more this illusory, momentary, material pleasure by exploiting material nature. Exploiting material nature. So as a result, people are becoming, they're already entangled when they come in contact with this material nature and consequently get a material body. But in that pursuit of sense enjoyment, they become more and more entangled. They become more and more forgetful of themselves, more and more forgetful of Krishna, and they become more and more dull-headed. One of the acharyas, he says, by using one's intelligence, human intelligence, for squeezing out more and more of that illusory, momentary sense pleasures, one actually becomes a donkey. Means his intelligence is lost. Intelligence is lost. Human intelligence is lost. Whereas the human intelligence, when we utilize for understanding who am I, why am I forced to suffer even though I never work for suffering, never want suffering? Why am I forced to suffer? And why is material sense pleasure never giving me the lasting happiness that I am seeking? Something that is not enduring. It is just a flickering that actually really does not exist at all. So this momentary sense pleasure actually is a false presentation by the material energy, Maya, to cheat the foolish living being into thinking that this material world is a very nice place, enjoyable place. So this cheating goes on, and blind leaders, they make elaborate arrangements for this cheating process to go on without any stoppage. Just like modern civilization, people are convinced that economic development is very, 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 very important if you want to enjoy life. If you want to squeeze out more and more bhoga, and therefore the world is practically mad after money, 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 money. It's not that in the ancient times people were not after money. even in the ancient times when people would work for getting money, but they knew that money is required merely to maintain this body so that we can utilize this body for a higher purpose. Not that I earn money and employ that money for squeezing out some sense enjoyment. And the more money I have, the more I can squeeze out sense pleasures. And the material energy is so very cruel that it always is alluring us in so many ways to make us attempt to squeeze out happiness in millions and billions of ways. Just like this development of technology or technological advancement, they go on innovating with more and more machines, more and more devices, and simply keep on increasing the bodily comforts. And when their intelligence is lost in pursuit of this illusory happiness, momentary happiness, then like animals, they learn to be satisfied with this illusory happiness, and they simply seek more and more of it. And even go into total forgetfulness, almost total forgetfulness of the fact that they are really not getting what they are seeking. So it's a very, very dangerous thing, this karma. So therefore, the scriptures say you can counteract karma only by prema. And this prema also is misunderstood sometimes as some kind of material love. Prema means love. But prema means that which will counteract karma. It is spiritual love, not material love. So these bodily relationships in which there is some so-called love is actually false. False in what sense? That the so-called love, material love, is simply an illusory presentation by the illusory energy called Maya, material energy. Because it is simply based on the temporary body which is constantly changing. And if we somehow get adjusted to this changing body for the duration of our life within this human form, then there will be a big shock that will come at the time of the change of body at death. So that's a traumatic experience at the time of death. If one is not prepared to face death, one doesn't understand what is death. In the Bhagavad Gita, very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Tatha dehantara prapti. Even while you are living in this body, you are definitely going through change of body. Though you are the same person within the body who is experiencing the change of body. Kaumaram, Yauvanam, Jara. And similarly, Yatha, just like you are changing body from childhood to youth to old age, Tatha, exactly the same way, you will change body at death. But the change of body at death is very shocking unless we have cultivated spiritual life, unless we have cultivated bhakti yoga. It's going to be a big shock. Because while the change of body happens during our lifespan in this human form, the new body we get when the body changes from childhood to youth or youth to old age, there is a small change that is almost ignored or thought of as favorable. Just like people say, oh, I'm growing up. They don't understand that body is actually dead matter. And dead matter, there is no growth of dead matter. Just like this table. With time, will this table grow? It will become bigger? Never. So, the body actually is dead matter. It appears to be living as long as the spirit soul is inside this body. You, the spiritual being, as long as you are in the body appears to be living. So all this is explained in the Bhagavad Gita concisely, but it is elaborated in the Bhagavatam. So when you hear these incidents described in the Bhagavatam, that Kardama Muni, he desired to marry not to enjoy his senses with a wife, but to carry out his duty as a Prajapati, to produce children for the sake of giving a chance to some spirit soul to become liberated from this material bondage. That is the whole purpose of begetting children. Putrarthe kriyate bharya putra pinda prayojanam. This is explained in the scriptures. Why should one get married? To have children. And why are children required? To actually become liberated from material bondage. So this is not understood, neither people care for the real purpose of life or of marriage or of begetting children, because they are simply misled by illusion into thinking that the ultimate goal of life itself is simply sense enjoyment and nothing more than that. So the scriptures warn us that this sense enjoyment is never going to really give you any tangible happiness or satisfaction, whereas Krishna consciousness, Bhakti Yoga, will not only get you out of this illusion, but also give you the real happiness and the real satisfaction that you are seeking very, very naturally, very easily, very nicely. And the Bhagavatam, while describing so many different instances of great personalities who taught by their own example, like Kardama Muni, he got married and he did his duty of begetting 9 daughters, whom he got them married to 9 great sages. And finally, on the request of his wife, he begot a son. But that son was no ordinary living being. He begot the Supreme Lord himself as his son. And because of that, he was naturally delivered, and his wife Devahuti also was delivered, completely liberated. So this is the way to actually understand the purpose of human life, the purpose of marriage, the purpose of begetting children, and the responsibility that goes with this human form of life. So all this is explained in this Bhagavatam by practical examples of lives of great devotees. Or even the Supreme Lord himself, when he incarnates, he teaches by his own example. So these scriptures, especially the Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, they are meant for human beings to understand the wonderful opportunity that this human form of life affords, and not miss this opportunity by simply being misled into considering sense gratification as the ultimate goal of life, but rather pursue self-realization and make a permanent solution to all our problems by becoming Krishna conscious and automatically getting that ultimate transcendental happiness and spiritual satisfaction that we are entitled to. So that is the teaching of the scriptures, and the process has been simplified by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and taught by Srila Prabhupada, the representative of Chaitanya in our present age, that simply you begin practice of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and all this knowledge, realization, the attainment of this enlightenment of who we are, who is Krishna, what is our relationship, where is real happiness. Everything will automatically happen by chanting and hearing the Hare Krishna mantra. But you can accelerate this process to quickly become perfect by taking guidance of the Acharya, the bona fide spiritual master, Prabhupada, and following some simple rules and regulations to regulate our life to nicely practice this bhakti yoga, beginning with this chanting Hare Krishna. It has been most simplified by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that is the mission of this International Society for Krishna Consciousness, to teach people this simple method of chanting Hare Krishna and practicing some similar practices of bhakti yoga, and very quickly making progress in spiritual advancement to end all our miseries and prepare ourselves for eternal life full of bliss and knowledge. I'll stop here. Grantaraj